This is not power of your creation!
Oh, say it again, Dexter. Omelette de fromage.
It was time for Thomas to leave. He had seen everything.
What are you wearing that for?
Oh, those pesky patriarchal societal demands were getting on my nerves. So I changed clothes.
Give it a week, they'll be begging you to change back.
Huh?
Oh, you poor, sweet summer child. If only you knew all the jimmies you would rustle. Or, hey, maybe they did and that's why they did it at all. Because under the surface of this moe exterior that is Dragon Maid lies the heart of an art piece that loves to poke at societal's norms and shortcomings. Not only does Dragon Maid have, well, dragons and maids, which puts it above at least 90% of other animes that don't have those things, it's also a show about gender norms, societal expectations, sexuality. Oh, and every internet kid's favorite word, feminism. I shit you not, some of how all of this ties into storming the goddamn Capitol building in America. So sit back, relax, pick up a tiki torch, a bike lock, or a gas mask. We're culture warring today, kiddies, through the lens of a moe anime. This clip highlighted the sentiments that pervaded through the 2010s, an overly complex verbiage to describe simplistic concepts that have existed in society for decades, centuries, and let's be honest, since the dawn of its fucking inception. This matched with a reactionary group of individuals who feel personally attacked because the words leave very little room for nuance or require further reading to understand that these aren't personal attacks on individuals, but groups and mechanisms by which society operates. You already know Zoomers can't read anything more than 128 characters. So God knows they're not gonna read a giant paper explaining that patriarchy and rape culture doesn't mean that you, your fact, are sexist or a rapist on an individualistic level. Essentially, it's miscommunication by individuals talking past each other while being fueled by bad actors on both sides telling them that the other side wants them dead. It's the inception of the left and the right, you know, the alt-right and SJWs, something that seems like it's been around forever, but really only just now started picking up steam. And while it's completely not as cool as the factions portrayed in Dragon Maid, the conflicts are fairly analogous. Groups of people and creatures that hate each other because they're afraid of one another. Actions and violence taken against one another because they think that the other one might attack first. Dragons and humans aren't incapable of living in harmony and having fun with one another. Everything in the show we've seen has shown us that this is the case. Kobayashi isn't some sort of Gandhi-like figure who's the only one who's able to accept these dragons for who they are. In fact, humans accepting dragons is pretty common in this world, and Kobayashi's harem got so big that she had to start piecemealing out her little dragons to her friends, and they fit in perfectly fine. The new character, the Opai Loli Alulu, was friends with multiple other humans in the original world, but her parents didn't exactly approve of it, stating that the relationship between humans and dragons were impossible to maintain, going so far as to destroy the gifts that she received from those human children. Eventually, her parents were killed in a nondescript raid, whatever it is that kills all parents in the anime, and the other dragons convinced her that it was all because of the humans, that they are to blame for their deaths and that she should hate them. But even though she doesn't believe that, she still throws herself into a blind hatred, consuming herself with the need to kill the humans to get revenge, because that's what her peers are telling her she should do. She even goes as far to go to the human world simply to kill Toru and as many humans as possible. She felt disgusted by the mere idea that Kobayashi would have the audacity to side with a dragon and even attempt to defend them. You don't have to go very far to see the parallels of that world and this world that the author may be pulling from. And fuck it, even if she's not, other people reading this media oftentimes are going to interpret it as such. Hatred of groups, be they Jews, blacks, or gay, or all three at once, isn't something that is inherent to anyone. It's a learned behavior, oftentimes spurred on by the teaching of one's parents. Even if you don't necessarily buy into the whole hating people because they're different than you mentality, societal pressures oftentimes makes you kind of fall into one of the two camps of hating someone someone or something for just being different than you. It's an inherent desire to want to fit in, oftentimes leading us to doing things we don't want to do. Peer pressure is a very real phenomenon. We do it for sometimes literal survival if you're in a place like prison or jail, where tons of non-racist individuals get swept up into various racist groups to survive, or just because you don't want to be ostracized by society, so you believe certain things and you say certain things because that's what all your friends are saying and doing. During the civil rights era in America, there were plenty of people who, while not being openly racist, simply complied with racist laws and sentiment because that's what was expected from them. That's what they were taught was right and how they should behave. In the famous monologue by Dr. King in a letter from a Birmingham jail, he states that there is no bigger threat than the white moderate, an individual who sees injustice, has the ability to speak out, but doesn't because of the fear of how others might perceive them. And Lulu is the embodiment of that, forgoing the relationship she once had in order to preserve her parents' archaic views of blind hatred, in turn fueling the war between the two and causing another clash. Eventually in the show, she learns that she doesn't really need to hate humans. She doesn't have to do it. She never really had that hatred, and she doesn't need to pretend that she does. Sure, to Kobayashi trying to save her from near death, which ultimately just was tantamount to her standing in front of the person and getting bitch slapped, but you know, she tried. A+ for effort, and it did spark that initial realization in Alulu's mind. However, because of Alulu's actions and her willingness to kill humans, and most likely the countless humans that she's killed over the years, the guilt stops her from being able to accept herself and forgive herself. It's a self-punishment that often plagues individuals who survive traumatic events, something akin to survivor's guilt. Sure, she didn't kill all the people in the city that day, but she tried to. And if we're thinking about it, morally speaking, is there any different than wanting to kill someone and attempting to and succeeding and just not succeeding? You had all intentions of killing those people. It was just by Toru's grace that they lived. So she's shunned from her old home and unwilling to allow herself to be accepted by a new one. And it takes the intervention of a literal goddess, Lucoa, another dragon who forces herself to reconcile her past actions with her current time, realizing that she's still young and should be allowed to make mistakes, even grave ones, without it being the end of her. That no matter how far down the hole you are, you should always have a rope that lets you climb out of it. And while being alt-right or even a neo-Nazi, as long as you keep your LARP under control and don't do something extravagant, isn't exactly one-to-one, it's still similar. It's a growing event where individuals who were swept up by the early culture wars are finding themselves slowly but surely returning, if not to the moderate position, to the left entirely. And without those helping hands of other people reaching down, willing to help you out of the hole that you're in, many would simply be disenfranchised individuals ashamed of their past actions and unwilling or unable to reconcile their past in order to continue living in the present. I myself would count myself amongst those numbers. I was fairly far right leaning, and while never truly being alt-right, the views and opinions I expressed were heavily racist, misogynistic, and other incredibly bad buzzwords. And this was after I was already well into leftist politics. I was a stout lefty before this, even more hardcore than most, actually reading economic papers and political theory, as well as understanding the scientific literature, and that was the basis that I used to form my opinion. And while at the time I wasn't an expert on how to conduct ethical studies, I was learning how to properly form experiments and conduct them, as well as how to publish findings, so my understanding of these topics and how data can be misleading and that raw data is not the same as a study should have been higher than the average individual, which makes it all the more embarrassing that I fell for the reactionary rhetoric of alt-right YouTubers and slowly began falling down the whole alt-right pipeline for years, because the people I hung out with, the people I associated with, told me that these were the correct ideas and opinions to have, and that even though I knew that these weren't exactly right or that this study might be flawed, I never really contested invested anything. So I can tell you from firsthand experience, having someone willing to help you out of those holes, those deep, dark, depressive holes, is one of the most important things. Because if you can't forgive yourself and be allowed into another community, you're either left alone, which breeds resentment, or you fall back into the only group willing to take you back. I don't think the author intended it to be this deep. In fact, I'm almost certain. But sometimes intent is almost irrelevant if it's perceived differently by all the people consuming the media. Take, for example, this original clip from this intro. The sub versus dub was one of the tipping points in the 2010s culture wars, being used as an indicator that the evil feminists had finished coming from your video games and your comics, and now they've moved on to your anime. But if we take a closer look at the scene between the dub and the sub, is there really anything that's that different between the two? When we get down into it, it's almost as if both are simply parallels, and that one is just a translation and localization of the other. It's why Brock calls rice balls jelly donuts rather than what they are. It's why the dub of the original Japanese story oftentimes is slightly different, just like the anime is slightly different between the manga and the light novel. It's because that anytime you're translating media, things are going to be lost. The context is going to get a little bit more muddy. In anime, it's way harder to produce, and that requires it to be toned down and more compressed in a timely manner. When you're translating things from one language to another one, you have to deal with things like cultural barriers. Sometimes entire concepts don't exist in one language where it exists in another. Japanese, for example, isn't a gendered language, which is why sometimes the sub will say she or her, etc., but they'll just be using the character's name. The further and further you go from the original source material, the more and more the views and opinions are going to be changed slightly to fit the audience who's intended to consume that media. This isn't bad, and oftentimes will convey the same idea just with different words. The only time it ever comes close to being bad is when the original message is completely lost, which I don't think happens in this scene. Luca, our super bossy female character with fatter racks and elongated musket, was tired of having people tell her how to dress, and so due to society saying that, hey, we don't want to see sexy women walking around in whatever makes them comfortable, she changed her outfit. And all within the span of like 32 seconds, Luca touches upon something that's interesting in this small clip. We love sexy women. We love them being sexy and doing sexy things and generally just making the atmosphere better. People enjoy porn, they enjoy sex, they enjoy whatever it is that they find personally attractive. But we hate women and men as well who control their sexuality. It's hard to explain, but here's something that generally gets the point across. Porn is exploding in the Middle East despite them killing women for not covering themselves up. Pastors who preach about how being gay is a sin, being caught with barely legal femboys in their hotel rooms. The amount of hypocrisy is endless, and the same people decrying Luca for showing off her body are the same ones being turned on by it. They may want her to cover up because they feel shame that they're attracted to her. We're taking away her freedom of expression for our personal feelings. Now that is me listening to the Japanese audio while reading the English subtitles, but these are just one man's interpretation. Then I'm not even sure it's the official sub, because I tried getting both Crunchyroll and Funimation to show me the subs, but I couldn't. Funimation apparently didn't have the rights, and Crunchyroll specifically won't play this episode. And since Shock of Shocks, I'm a weeb who doesn't actually know Japanese, I just have to take it on face value. This is an accurate representation of what was said. But I ask you, was it really that different from the dub? Yes, the dub is using more direct language, such as patriarchy, but it's not incorrect or even against the views expressed in the sub. The patriarchy is a very real and historical thing. To deny it is like denying the fact that not everyone was equal in America. Look, I know some YouTubers with avatars in the corner of the videos told you that patriarchy is a bad word. But listen to me, a different YouTuber with an avatar in a different corner telling you that it's not. Patriarchy simply means a society where men are predominantly the ones in control, and the ones that control and manipulate society's standards. That's the short of it. Women not being able to go topless where guys are is patriarchal. Women needing to be chaste while guys can sleep around, patriarchal. And yes, being told what is acceptable to wear, be it a full veil or skirt down to your ankles, is again some patriarchal views. Meaning that when Luca in the dub says that it's the patriarchal standards making her change her clothes, it is completely analogous to saying it's because the way people in society are treating me that I changed how I dress. Also, remember, Luca isn't exactly going out naked with C-string bikinis. in this episode at least, but normally wears pretty normal outfits that we would never decry as being inappropriate in most other situations. Yes, she is a sex icon for the show. Well, I mean, most of the characters are sex icons for the show, but she certainly is one as well. But a woman being free with her sexuality and wearing whatever she wants to wear shouldn't be something bad. Same with a guy. But despite this translation and localization being spot on, it still turns so many away from the things that were actually being said because of the way it was being interpreted by bad actors. People telling individuals how they ought to interpret this media, and that this is actually saying that all men are the problem, or that men are forcing her to change, and that this anime is actually saying that you yourself are making Luca change because you're a bad person. But that's not the case, and that's not what this scene is trying to say. It's why I don't typically use words like patriarchy, rape culture, and other terms, because they're so loaded down with bad baggage. The way that people interpret these terms make it so that conversations are kind of impossible to have. People have such negative views of these concepts that using them, you serve a disservice. Our goal isn't to alienate and shame people, but our goal is to prevent people from hating each other for things that really shouldn't matter. Our goal is to uplift everyone, or at least that should be the goal of everyone. Dragon Maid is an anime, and that means it was made in Japan. Japan isn't exactly super progressive. Things like being gay or a woman being equal to a man is something purely in anime a lot of the times. Sexual harassment is commonplace and the recourse is little. People often look at Japan as being this utopia because animes and toys and manga and whatever. But this is the same country that sided with the Nazis and Hitler had to tell to calm down. This is the same country that doesn't to this day acknowledge all of its war crimes. Sure, America doesn't either, but we're not here to say that America is good. That's just not the point of this video. This isn't some sort of utopia where you can have all these degenerate or even normal fetishes and desires and be treated fairly in society. It's a fairly conservative country, and this is expressed all throughout Dragon Maid, all throughout the story, and especially the second season. It's not that Kobayashi isn't attracted to Toru or doesn't have extremely strong feelings for her. It's that she's not a man. It's never, I'm not into girls, you know. It's always, I'm not a man, you know. Almost as if just because she's a woman, she by virtue therefore can't be into Toru. Even when she's turned into a male, or at least given a penis, she's still a female at heart and doesn't give in to her desires because she knows that society would never accept that. She also is fairly intelligent and understands that this isn't permanent, but it also highlights that, yeah, she still wants to bang this dragon regardless, because the entire scenes have to deal with her trying to hide her boner or trying not to pop one, because she knows this is how she should act in society. Dragon Maid even talks about work culture in Japan as being exceptionally toxic. Apparently, even in Japanese people's fantasies, they can't escape the whole grind of going to work. Kobayashi wakes up early and takes the last train home. You can learn a lot about a country and a culture by the slang and words they have. And Japan has a term for being roped on the train and working oneself to death. If that doesn't tell you all you really need to know about Japan's current culture and society and the ills that are affecting it, I don't know what will. I don't want to make this video saying that Japan is bad and other places good, but Japan has plenty of issues that need to be addressed, and Dragon Maid kind of touches upon all of them. There are some serious problems that are in Japanese society, but it's not exclusive to the Japanese. It happens in America. It happens in Russia. God knows it happens in China. Dragon Maid, whether you like it or hate it, it's a feminist piece of artwork. Even if the author doesn't intend it to be, which I doubt since the sub is so heavy-handed. It was touted as being an example of SJWs taking over yet another thing that young men enjoy. They went for your video games and now they're after your anime. But the thing is, Dragon Maid was always on the side of the so-called SJWs. The whole story deals with dragons who hated the entire race of humans, finding one who taught her how to love them again and how to accept others. All the other dragons are part of different factions, some that would normally battle one another constantly, but they all live together happily in harmony. In season 2, the new dragon is one who loved humans, but in order to survive had to learn to hate them because that's what their parents told them they should do. Hating the dub for being socially progressive is like hating X-Men for doing the same thing. At its core, it's a critique of society, gender norms, and sexual orientation, and even racial relationships. All things that Japan and other countries aren't scoring exceptionally high on. It's so easy to get swept up in this online hatred, this hate machine on either the left or the right, telling you that all these other groups are bad for XYZ reason, and it's so easy to hate, and it's so much harder to be accepting and loving of one another. I'm not saying that you have to like everyone. I'm not saying that you have to like certain things, but what we shouldn't do is we shouldn't fight, kill, and hurt other people over these simplistic concepts. It's really easy, I know, to just say, hey, be excellent to one another. And it's another thing to actually live that, because there's a lot of people that are going to push your buttons out there, and it's really easy to just want to hate them all. And if Dragon Maid does anything, it shows that this is a process. Lily doesn't stop hating herself overnight, and she doesn't start accepting herself overnight either. It's a long process that goes on for a while. The other dragons aren't exactly exceptionally trusting of all humans either. It still takes them a long time to understand that they can be safe around them, and that even though there are still some bad humans, that humans still do some bad fucked up shit, it doesn't mean that all of them are like that. But hey, that's just one guy with an avatar in the corner of the video telling you how to interpret the media. You have your own mind. Let me know what you think down below in the comment section. As always, I've been Faith and Moliminous. I love your faces, so I hope you at least like my video, and I will see you in the next one.